Do you remember when buying a desktop computer meant clearing out half the space under your desk for a massive beige tower that sounded like a commercial jet engine taking off every time you opened a web browser? We've come a long way since the early days of broadband and those massive heat-generating rigs. Now the most capable and interesting desktop machine in the world easily fits in the palm of your hand, but you absolutely should not let its diminutive size fool you. We are just a couple of months out from Apple's annual Worldwide Developers Conference, and according to reliable sources, we are about to see the official unveiling of the M5 Mac Mini, but the big question we need to answer today is whether this is just another iterative, boring spec bump, or if we are looking at a fundamental shift in how Apple handles desktop computing in this new era of artificial intelligence. Let's separate the real leaks from the noise. Welcome back, everyone. If you've been following my studio setup and workflow for a while, you know I'm primarily an iPad Pro guy. For the vast majority of my daily tasks, the iPad does exactly what I need it to do with zero friction. But as those of us who remember the Nokia 3310 era know perfectly well, sometimes you just need a traditional, rock-solid desktop environment to get actual heavy lifting done. Whether it's wrangling a massive Excel spreadsheet that brings mobile apps to their knees, running proper web-based architectural tools, or in my specific case, building out incredibly complex maps for my Dungeons & Dragons campaigns in Dungeon Scrawl, the iPad's mobile browser architecture still throws in the towel and begs for mercy. That is precisely why I picked up the M4 Mac Mini about 8 months ago. It's an incredibly capable safety net that gives you a massive amount of processing power for an affordable price. But it's been roughly 18 months since the M4 iteration hit the shelves, which in the relentless cycle of Apple Silicon means we are exactly in the window for a major refresh. Today, we are going to meticulously break down the latest supply chain leaks, component rumors, and realistic expectations surrounding the upcoming M5 Mac Mini, going point by point to see what actually matters to your workflow. Let's start by looking at the anticipated design changes and overall build quality. Apple recently gave the Mac Mini a significant chassis overhaul, shrinking it down to essentially the physical footprint of an Apple TV. From what the most accurate manufacturing leaks suggest regarding exact dimensions, the M5 version is going to maintain this exact same form factor. Honestly, speaking as someone who appreciates functional engineering, that is perfectly fine. When you have an aluminum enclosure that already efficiently dissipates heat for the M4 without the internal fan ever spinning up to audible levels, there is absolutely no need to reinvent the wheel just for the sake of marketing. However, rumor has it that Apple is slightly altering the internal logic board architecture to accommodate a much more robust thermal paste application and a redesigned copper heatsink. This could actually matter because consistent thermal management is the only way these incredibly dense, modern chips maintain peak performance without aggressively throttling during heavy, sustained rendering workloads. Now let's talk about the actual engine under the hood, the camera, or in this case, the pure performance upgrades. The base M5 chip is reportedly sticking to a very similar CPU and GPU core count as the current M4, but what's interesting here is that Apple is heavily and aggressively pivoting toward artificial intelligence processing. The M5 is rumored to feature a radically upgraded neural engine, potentially running up to 3.5 times faster than the silicon found in the M4. Why does this matter in real life to someone who isn't writing code for a living? Because modern macOS is increasingly relying on on-device machine learning for practically everything, from advanced photo editing algorithms and background noise cancellation on video calls, to real-time voice processing and predictive text compilation. For the absolute power users among us, the M5 Pro variant is where things start to get slightly ridiculous. We are hearing consistent whispers from the supply chain of up to an 18-core CPU configuration. To put that into perspective, that is legitimate heavy-duty workstation-level processing power crammed into a box the size of a couple of stacked drink coasters. But as you would logically expect, that performance tax is going to be incredibly steep. While the current base model sits at an approachable $599, the Pro tier jumps aggressively to $1,399. Moving on to a topic that has been a personal pain point for me, and likely many of you watching this: storage capacity and battery tech, well, power efficiency in a desktop context. The base model M4 shipped with a completely underwhelming 256 gigabytes of storage. Let's be perfectly candid here, in the modern era of computing, 256 gigs is barely enough for the operating system, a handful of essential applications, and a few localized files. I have over 2 decades of high-resolution family and professional photos, so 256 gigs is essentially a rounding error for my data storage needs. I ended up begrudgingly buying the 512 gigabyte M4, and honestly, even that is pushing its absolute limits today. The remarkably good news: reliable supply chain analysts are indicating that Apple is finally, mercifully, making 512 gigabytes the absolute floor for the M5 Mac Mini base model. They know that with new AI software features caching massive amounts of data locally to protect user privacy, small hard drives just aren't viable or practical anymore. A 1 TB option should firmly become the standard second tier, which frankly is the sweet spot for a machine that is meant to reliably sit on your desk for 5 to 7 years. Let's look at standard connectivity, which ties directly into display support and new software features. We are fully expecting to see Thunderbolt 5 make its grand debut on the M5 Mac Mini. This is a massive generational leap forward in data bandwidth. Currently, the M4 does a genuinely fantastic job driving Apple's own Studio Display XDR at 5K resolution and 120 Hz. But if you dare to step outside of Apple's carefully curated walled garden and try to run certain high-end, high-refresh rate ultra-wide monitors from brands like Samsung or LG, you occasionally run into frustrating bandwidth bottlenecks. Thunderbolt 5 essentially obliterates those bottlenecks entirely, offering up to 120 gigabits per second of data transfer. That means flawless, stutter-free support for multiple ultra-high refresh rate gaming or productivity monitors. Alongside this port upgrade, we are looking at standard across-the-board upgrades to Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 6. This natively brings the Mac Mini in line with the absolute latest network infrastructures, ensuring significantly lower latency and much better wireless congestion management if you happen to be running a busy multi-device home office. So let's take a step back, take a breath, and analyze this from a practical standpoint to see what's actually believable here. Is this M5 Mac Mini an automatic, day one must-buy upgrade? If you're currently sitting on an older Intel machine or even an M1 Mac Mini, the leap to the M5 is going to feel absolutely monumental. The drastic difference in the neural engine alone, paired with vastly superior memory bandwidth, will completely change how the machine responds under a heavy load. However, we do need to critically talk about those pricing rumors. The current prevailing whisper is that this desperately needed base storage bump to 512 gigabytes is absolutely not going to be free, and we might logically see the base price of the M5 Mac Mini rise from $599 to $699. Honestly, even with that Apple tax applied, that is still a phenomenal value proposition for the sheer amount of cutting-edge silicon you're getting, but it's undoubtedly something you need to factor into your IT budget. Furthermore, let's remember that the tech rumor mill is not infallible, and a lot of the early hype can just be marketing fluff designed to generate clicks. We've all been burned by guaranteed supply chain leaks before. Just look at the base model iPad refresh that was heavily rumored to materialize this past March and ghosted us completely. But given the historical release cadence of Apple Silicon, the timing for an M5 Mac Mini announcement at WWDC makes perfect logical sense. To cleanly summarize the most important takeaways for you, the M5 Mac Mini is shaping up to be a shockingly serious powerhouse, specifically and deliberately targeted at future-proofing for AI workflows and improving external display connectivity with Thunderbolt 5. If you're happily rocking an M4 right now like I am, you probably don't need to panic by the M5 on launch day unless your specific professional workflow absolutely demands that intense local processing power. That being said, Apple's direct trade-in values for relatively recent, well-maintained hardware are usually quite generous, and I will definitely be checking what they offer for my trusty M4 when the time comes. June is historically a fantastic, high-energy month for Apple hardware enthusiasts, and it genuinely looks like this year won't disappoint those of us looking for desktop upgrades. I'm genuinely curious, though, what specific feature, port, or spec bump would absolutely force you to upgrade your current desktop setup? Let me know your thoughts and your current daily driver down in the comments below. As always, if you found this breakdown helpful and appreciated the distinct lack of generic internet hype, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button and strongly consider subscribing to the channel for more grounded, realistic tech analysis. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.